because we have preliminary breath tests and some standardized field sobrieties that we can run people through for alcohol. Extremely more difficult for us to detect somebody that's driving that's high on marijuana or some other drug. People will stretch the boundaries. People will decide what they can and can't do as far as smoking. And that's scary because there's a domino and a ripple effect to that. Then other people see that, other people start doing it. And law enforcement is taxed as it is. And for the public to expect us to be able to know every single nuance and enforce every single nuance of this new recreational law is going to be very, very challenging for us. The medical marijuana law, as it's written now, is very, very challenging to enforce because a lot of it's up to interpretation. To my knowledge, law enforcement wasn't really used all that much when that law was compiled, and I don't know how much input we had with this recreational marijuana bill that is on the ballot here in November. And again, I'll circle back around to people say all the time, why don't you spend your time on fighting real crime? Why are you worried about a little bit of marijuana? Well, that's exactly what we'll be doing if this passes. If you have a whole bunch more people out there out getting high, making bad decisions, getting behind the wheel of a car, then that's exactly what we're going to be doing, is dealing with real crime. Real crimes where there's real victims, real people that die in car crashes, real people that get their houses broken into because somebody's looking for the next fix, real victims in assaults, and all the stuff that goes with this. That's exactly what we'll be spending our time doing, in my opinion, if this gets passed.
All righty.
I'm the elected
Welcome,
England
everybody.
County Sheriff.
We've launched.
We have launched.
Can you be heard?
Yeah, I can.
All right, so officially Planet Green Cheese episode number 401. We're calling it.
My ride's here.
I don't think your thing's on.
It is. I
Okay,
can hear
yeah,
myself.
I can hear.
I hear myself in the.
What is it?
In the headphones.
Find a ride?
I hear you both.
My ride's here.
Okay.
Is your? You need some volume.
I do, maybe.
Where's your plug?
Much better.
Is that better?
All right, so
Good.
that's the name of the show. We got that figured out so far.
Yep. Step one.
And we usually now introduce ourselves. I'm Michael Comorn and Comorn Law PLC. It's Planet Green Cheese, a show about medical marijuana reform. That's what we're going to talk about tonight for about 2 hours. We have with us Jim Powers, running the board over there, and the microphone levels.
Good evening, everybody. It's good to be here. Happy Thursday. Michael is having issues. Help to figure it out here, but glad to be here.
Moving around the room, we are absent a Deborah Young, who is thinking about us tonight. I understand she's somewhere else. And wish her well. She's going to be back.
I understand she's somewhere else, yes.
I understand she is somewhere else.
Yes, much better.
I'm waiting for
Couldn't-
confirmation on that.
Well, she's not here, so I think there's at least
Probable cause to believe.
circumstantial evidence that she's somewhere else.
Yes.
And we were trying. Okay, moving around the room, we have, who, if you didn't know by now, we have the Rick Thompson, who's here.
I am the Rick. The Rick Thompson. Like of Rick and Morty fame, I am the Rick. That's true.
We're glad to have Rick here. I harass him every week to try to show up and get him to participate. We're glad to have you. And I understand he's loaded up on a bunch of news he wants to get to.
Yes, I have news.
We also have infamous Jamie Lowell.
Like Notorious B.I.G., but not B.I.G.
Of infamous cannabis.
It's not really that big.
That's right. Very talkative today. Shroom-like.
The shroom like Jamie Lowell.
It's not the size of the fungus.
Potency.
That's how far it spits the pores.
And we have dear friend, attorney, guitar player, Jeff Frazier is here.
Muy buenas noches a todo el mundo. Hello, I Bell.
We also do a couple quick shout-outs to our people that are sometimes here or may not be. Well, first of all, Dewey and Pam, of course. Alan Peisner, not listening.
AP.
Schaller doesn't listen.
Alan, you should call in. I don't know why you don't call in anymore, Alan. Don't understand it.
You didn't expect him to answer, though, right?
Tommy was here earlier. Josh Colton's not here either. He's
Tommy's here.
MIA. Oh, is he?
He's right there.
It's right
Where's the
there.
video? Why is the video going? Just kidding. We should say we've been working diligently all day because we put together a bunch of very important and timely and significant pieces of video. Tommy is currently editing.
Feverishly
To
editing.
make the point, the main point. All right, so let's start the show here. We got a lot of things lined up, and we're going to see how and where it goes. But I do want to address, we played at the top of the intro there, the wonderful sheriff from Lansing. Is that right? Wickersmith.
Wrigglesworth.
And he was...
He's a giant douche.
You know, I wanted to take the time right here so everyone kind of heard the things he was saying. We were giggling how silly it was and how
Especially Jamie.
ridiculous. Just some of the things come out. But look at, as we were discussing these things, one of the realities...
First time Wigglesworth has pissed me off.
One of the realities is that these are words that are said by the law enforcement community. They were echoed at some function in Monroe where they got out the prosecutors and the county prosecutors.
They're in Jackson tonight.
Jackson tonight was this safe and unproductive Michigan. What's her name?
Healthy and productive Michigan.
Right. So they're the
Douchebags.
Yeah, I would just like to say Scott Greenlee does not exude health or productivity.
Questionably from Michigan.
But as we know, they are having some elected officials, law enforcement, shine their uniforms and shine up their badges and fix their hair and get in front of the cameras.
Didn't they say that they don't make the rules, they just enforce them? I'm pretty sure I heard
Jim
that.
hit kind of a high pitch there.
Yeah, I
point
just
that out.
I don't like to see the police trying to legislate. That's not their role, and that kind of bullshit should be illegal.
We've discussed this. This has been a topic amongst the community, I think. We've talked about it here. The question is, what involvement does the line get drawn at for law enforcement? They're individual citizens. They have a right to act as individual citizens like
Not in
anyone
their freaking uniform.
but in their uniform.
Well, this was the basis of the discussion that we had yesterday at the roundtable with Dana Nessel, in which Michael Comorn was not there, although... Well, he was scheduled to be there, had work to do, and so he couldn't make it. That happened sometime.
I understand he talked about every single topic.
But he would have been a perfect fit for a lot of the discussion that was taking place.
I think the way you framed it was most
talked
of the
about
things you'd like to talk about.
They talked about the lab issue. They talked about Carruthers. They talked about all types of shit that he's directly involved in. Yeah.
And didn't mention that these are my topics. It's fine. It's fine.
But what we did talk about is the legitimacy of uniformed law enforcement officials using company time, company vehicles, company reputation to advocate for a political position. This is not like when they came out and warned everybody about K2 and Spice, because that was a service they provided to the community that wasn't based on politics. It was based on warning parents about a danger to their children. This was a political statement to oppose a proposition that's available for. Exactly. So this is completely different than the First Amendment speech right, and I believe Dana Nessel agreed with us.
Well, I mean, okay. Let me back that up a little.
Can we sue? We should sue.
We got a lot of topics on the table. I just want Rick. You made an interesting point, distinguishing it from K2. I mean, whether they believe it, whether they are genuine or not, they're trying to make the case that the dangers associated with K2 are similar to marijuana.
Truth. That is what they're trying to do. Even though they don't say those words, they're trying to base on the same hysteria they created over the synthetic.
But
there was no.
It's not a ballot initiative.
Right.
But the point is that doesn't stop them from having an opinion. They're still going to do that. That's what I'm saying. Like, but to me, see, they're going to. I think the distinction is whether they have the
school districts
ability.
School districts can't do it. School districts are allowed to publish statements that are completely 100% based in fact, and that is it. And that should be the exact same standard that these folks are held to. They're public employees.
Well, no. The question is, listen. The debate over the facts of what they believe.
It's not up to interpretation. I mean, you have kids, Michael. You get the same kind of stuff at home that I get from my schools when there's bond proposals and millages and whatnot that are on the ballot. And those types of statements, they're very careful.
They are very careful.
Very careful.
Very crafted.
And that's how it should be. They should not have a uniformed officer sitting there talking out of his ass.
Well, hold on.
If you have data, bring it. Bring the fucking data, but don't sit there
They
and
had the Rocky Mountain
opine.
data.
on this bullshit. Yeah, Rocky Mountain data. Yeah.
All right.
I got some Rocky Mountain data for you. Sorry.
Well, listen. The point is, should they be engaging? Number one, is there a legal basis for them to do so? In putting all of that aside, are people justified in being pissed off? And if they are, why aren't more people pissed off about it? And why do they get away with it? Okay, so that's really so. The first thing is, this happens all the time. There seems to be no pushback from it. The idea that they are going to warn people. Like if there was a real danger, like, if they're telling folks, like, hey, we're warning people that are using heroin, there's fentanyl out there, be careful. Would we find that to be, it's dangerous, it kills you?
It's different. He is speaking out specifically against the initiative. The two are not even in the same ballpark. If you have a police officer that has data that knows that marijuana or any other drug is harmful, and they go out and say, such and such is harmful, you shouldn't do it. Of course they're allowed to do that. And for a lot of those sorts of instances, they're allowed to express their opinion on the matter. But what they're absolutely not supposed to do is come out and say, we don't want this law passed. Here's all this bullshit to try and sway the public opinion in order to prevent this initiative from passing. That is illegal for all these other public servants, but apparently those laws don't apply to them. And
so you don't have an issue with them doing it. You just want them to
take the uniform off and be off the clock.
Yeah. Well, you can say whatever you want. About. I would agree that they could do that.
Play by the rules.
Well, the question is, you're saying that they're not being honest in the substance of their messaging. I think we lose on that. Not that I think that their messaging is accurate, and I'm saying it's not full of lies, but that's a debate. That's a factual dispute. That's.
Even let's say
put that aside.
What's the facts that he is there to try and defeat the initiative, and the initiative has the police are not directly linked to this initiative. I don't see school districts coming out and opining on this initiative. We all know what they think, and they're all hosting these town halls to make sure that they bring in people that sit there and articulate exactly what they think for them. But they're working within the bounds, and it makes it much harder for them to do. And to have someone like a police organization, which the reason people deal with it is because, by and large, people respect the police, or people fear the police. It's one or the other. Either way, they're not going to speak out against them. They're certainly not going to sue them.
Well, see, I think the reality is that communities give great deference to the police officers' perceptions. Most communities want to embrace the police, and even for those that feel antagonistic to the police, you're always going to find community members that, most of the time, that are in favor of the police and want police to be enforcing safety.
Is that why you think it's difficult to challenge the credibility of their information? Because
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you might find communities that would say, well, let's see what the police think if this is a good idea.
Typically, they do ask for police input on issues where they're not educated, and they do need to have some kind of get a handle on it.
Right.
I mean, we see local communities do it all the time.
I mean, and we've seen the police influence legislators. We know that,
and that's why I get so animated about it, because you have people like Sergeant Amy Denner, who is sitting there testifying at every single one of these hearings. Like, why are you here? Why are you here? This isn't your.
But they have some.
Instead of taking a responsive role, they've taken a proactive role.
Right, well, they have some perspective and some experience on some of these issues, and something of value maybe to offer at times during the discussions of how a law change may affect policing. But they actually show up and weigh in and
show slideshows.
Well, and do and
here's the thing. I got to
try to influence things, and they have a lot of influence, as it turns out, and it is weird that they are supposed to just be enforcing the laws that are handed to them, and yet they're really participating very heavily in which ways these laws go.
Okay, so let's talk about this. See, I think the better argument is whether or not they're allowed to participate, and if they are, you know what I'm saying? Like, I would say that they shouldn't, not on police time. If they were going to, it should be through a centralized organization or some non-profit association that somehow has the authority of the sheriff's department to make the sheriff's association of whatever. I'm saying just the idea that the elected officials and the police that are paid by the county like that. I agree that to me they should be speaking.
Jeff, you keep your response That's
it's
short.
inappropriate.
Appreciate it.
But I mean, the problem is if they're